Okay, okay. Take your seats. Settle down, settle down. Welcome to the Road to Concord 101. This class is about all things connected to the path of history leading from Mount Sinai to Lexington Green and the individual liberty and freedom of man. If you're in the wrong place, feel free to get up and go see the registrar's office about dropping this class, preferably before you meet the professor. In the event you do not already know this, your professor is Joe Bakanovic, and he has a bit of a reputation on campus. He is most definitely an acquired taste, but if you can learn to tolerate him, he will make you better at defending your position, whatever it may be. I'm T.A. Charlie. I'm here to help the professor, but more importantly, you. We encourage you to take notes, and if you have questions, feel free to call. If you'd like the number, please email us. You can also post your questions in the comments, and we'll get the professor's attention. Part of my job is to let you know a little bit about your professor. As I said earlier, the professor has that bit of a reputation on campus. Not all of it is good. Let me help explain a little with a story about how I came to be the professor's TA. I was invited to attend one of his classes. My first impression of the professor was that he was an egotistical, narcissistic know-it-all. My intent after only a few minutes of class was never to attend another class with this professor. But after class, Professor Joe came up to me and thanked me for my class participation and told me that my perspective was valuable, and he asked me to keep coming to class. This actually took me back a little. To me, he seemed inconsistent. What was I to do? I decided to continue coming to his classes. As I did, I actually started doing what he does encourage students to do. Check behind him and see if what he is teaching is actually correct. I have done this over and over again, and generally speaking, I found what he teaches to be backed by sound, valid, and rational arguments from reputable sources. When I have challenged him and provided a sound, valid, and rational argument in opposition to his current position, he immediately changed his position and thanked me for correcting him. Why do I tell you all this? Professor Joe is a little rough around the edges, especially in the way he delivers his content. But if you stick with him and listen to what he teaches and then go and check his sources, you will likely find, as I did, he will help you better understand the world around you and help you to think better and hopefully to live better. At least that is our hope. One last note. This class builds on itself. Therefore, it is important to attend class regularly. We will not always have time to go over previously covered material. If you are new, we suggest you watch our older classes. We've created playlists to help you with those things we feel are of special importance. Now, let's get started.
Good morning. This is the Road to Concord. I am Joe Bakanovic, and it is Monday, the 20th of October, 2025. Normally, we do the Manic Mondays where I go over a whole bunch of silliness, with the headlines and politics and everything. Don't feel like doing that today. Got something else in my craw that I want to go over. The rule of law versus the rule by law. I'm wondering how many of our citizens? I'm not sure that's a good word for it. I wonder how many of those individuals living within the confines of this nation, how's that? That's better, more accurate description, have had civics class. Better yet, have had a proper civics class. Even better than that, have passed a properly taught civics class, because I'm not so sure this No Kings protest group understands the slightest little bit about rule of law versus rule by law. You see, if you are under a king or a tyrant and you protest them, like on January 6th, they put you in jail, like on January 6th. But if you're under the rule of law with a duly elected president and you protest them, that president might troll you on social media, but he won't have his people out there arresting you for an insurrection. Of course, that requires a little bit of common sense going on here, and I don't know that we have that anymore. So I wanted to talk about the rule of law versus the rule by law. And before we get into it, I want to explain that this is bigger than just government. Rule of law, comment on the board from the Arctic Tortoise. Hey, it's not illegal until you get caught, right? For those who don't know the Arctic Tortoise, if he is in town, you must stop on green lights and go on red, because the tortoise goes on red. And as he goes through the light, he kisses his hand and smacks the roof of his vehicle. That's his way of blessing himself as he goes through the red light. So you stop at green, and when people ask you what you're doing, just say the tortoise might be in town. So that's what he means by it's only illegal if you get caught, or at least that's one example of what he means. So, rule of law, language. If you are keeping to the known, published and accepted rules of a language, like in our case, the English language, that's rule of law. But when you start committing language fallacies like equivocation, where you use dog whistles, you use a word like liberal to mean the opposite of what the word originally meant, what the definition means. So you do that to fool people, to convince them that you believe in individual rights and liberty under the idea of natural law, and you believe in limited government and protection of every individual equally. That is, if that's what you understand liberal means, then that's the rule of law. But as soon as you start changing the words, and they mean something different for you versus other people, well, now that's rule by law within language. That's weaponizing language. So now Trump is a tyrant and a king. Why? Because he enforces the law. But Biden and Obama are great men and rulers of the people who were elected by a overwhelming majority. And you have to listen to them because they're defenders of democracy. The problem is the reality, the objective, observable reality, the things that these three men do. The observation says that Biden and Obama were tyrants who thought they were kings. And Trump is a questionable individual who sometimes does and doesn't follow the law, which makes you wonder whether or not he knows the law or question the people around him. But I didn't have that problem with Obama and Biden. I knew how to decipher progressivese, and I knew straight up they were telling me they thought they were kings, because I understand how they pervert the rule of the language. I understood that with them, I'm under the rule by law. What's the difference? What do I mean? Well, first off, let's just get into it. I put this up on your homework. This is the roadtoconcord.com, our blog page. This is the show notes for today's class. I put a warning up here. It says, if you follow behind to check our work, mostly my work, or you better still, you set out to do your own work on this subject, be careful not to use websites. They're part of the rule by law, a.k.a. mainstream sources. Why do I say this? I want to show you. I want to start out right now by showing you a brilliant piece of propaganda. Look up here on the left. American Constitution Society. Thanks for playing, but that's an bastardization of the language, because I'm going to show you they ain't got nothing to do with the Constitution. They're all about Woodrow Wilson's Constitution, but not, I said I wouldn't do this anymore, but I'm sorry, Woodrow freaking Wilson's Constitution. I can't help it. That man he's vile. And everything that he represents is vile. And everybody who supported him then and now. So this is by Christopher Wright Droscher, the Vice President of Policy and Program at the Constitution Society. And he writes, The rule of law is under attack and risks collapse if the Trump administration continues to claim that the president has the authority to decide what is and isn't against the law. Oh? I thought it was 3 equal branches of government. You're the Constitution Society. You're supposed to know this, Mr. Durocher. So what's with this comment? The executive, which is the president, has every bit as much as right to decide what is and isn't against the law as the judiciary has. Not my opinion. That of the men who wrote and ratified the Constitution. Their words, not mine. So, first sentence, I'm already wondering whether or not Mr. Durocher understands the rule of law of language, or of the Constitution, or of philosophy, logic, and reason. He continues, but what is the rule of law, and what are the consequences when the rule of law is weakened or completely dismantled? He says the rule of law isn't an abstract concept. Wrong. It sure is, if you understand what abstract means. It is the principle that laws are applied in a consistent and predictable manner. Okay, I'm going to continue. In the yes, I'm very biased against this guy. He's, to quote one of my favorite lines from the TV show House, to quote my favorite character in the movie, Gregory House, he's an idiot, from the French word idiot. Either that or he's an intentional propagandist. He says, in the United States, the rule of law ensures that the U.S. constitutional regime's bedrock principles of separation of powers, democratic accountability, due process, and equal protection under the law can be relied upon. Well, then not if the Democrats are in charge. Founding fathers and second president of the United States, John Adams, famously wrote that the rule of law, at its most essential, means a government of laws and not of men. The rule of law is a, quote, a principle of government in which all persons, institutions, and entities, public and private, including the state itself, are accountable to the laws that are publicly promulgated, equally enforced, and independently adjudicated, unquote. That was Adams. And then Mr. Dorscher, or whatever the heck his name is, he continues, in other words, the rule of law anticipates that duly passed laws are enforceable against all people and institutions, including the government and government actors, no matter the position or office they may hold, including the President of the United States. When there is a dispute about the legitimacy or constitutionality of the law or its application, it is the role of an impartial court to evaluate the arguments and come to a reasoned conclusion to settle the dispute. No, it is not. No, not under matters of the Constitution. It is not. That is a lie. So that's where I end. That's why I tell you, be careful with these people. It is the role of the court system in the United States, under the original document that we are supposed to govern ourselves, the Constitution. It is the role of the courts to decide whether or not the law is constitutional, and whether or not you are applying the law in a constitutional manner. It is not the rule of the courts to resolve the issue. The court is supposed to say the law is constitutional, in which case the law is being applied constitutionally according to the letter and original intent of the people who wrote the law. Therefore, that's all I can say. Or the law is unconstitutional, in which case it is now kicked back to Congress. End of the court's job, end of the court's role. When the court says the law is unconstitutional, therefore this part is not a tax and we'll keep this part and we'll do that, they legislated. They acted unlawfully. They violated the rule of law, per Dorscher's their own words. And our courts do this all the time. And notice he said impartial court. That's a fallacy there. He's using loaded language. He's implying that our court system is not partial. Why is it that all these deep state people are ending up with left-wing appointed judges in their cases right now? You think that's an accident? You think that's impartial? No. That's showing you that our courts are partial. Why is it everybody telling Trump you can't do something is, for the most part, a left-wing appointed judge? But you can't say that about the right, because there are some right-wing, there's some appointed judges, Trump appointed, that have told him, no, you can't do this. Well, That would seem to me to be a little different than all the left-wing judges saying Trump can't do that. The other thing is if the court says, okay, the law is constitutional, but the way the president is enforcing it is unconstitutional. Court's done. This is not a civil matter where the court is being sought for redress of grievance. The idea that the court is the final arbiter and final word, judicial supremacy, that is created by an unconstitutional ruling within our court system. That is not what the Constitution says. 3 equal, co-equal branches of government. And the founding fathers, especially Jefferson, famously said that if the court is allowed to become what it has become, it would destroy the rule of law because they would become oligarchs, tyrants, which is what they are. We have tyrants in black robes. And that's part of what's hacking me off, is people act as though this is the rule of law when it is anything but. It is the exact opposite. This is the rule by law, not of law. What do I mean, rule by law? This is from Law Insider. It says, rule by law, definition. Rule by law means the opposite of rule of law. It means you're not ruled by the law, you're ruled by something else. And it continues. It refers to a police state in which government invokes the law, indeed creates law, to quote unquote justify excessive use of government force. Like when you create a law so that you can prosecute Trump, which is exactly what the left did. Ergo, according to the left's own assertions, they are tyrants. They are kings. They are outside of the law, above the law. The law doesn't apply to them. Their own words. They're hypocrites. The rest of this definition, it says detention without trial laws are common examples of these, rule by law. That's exactly what the left did to the January 6th people they arrested. And legislation enacted pursuant to post 9/11 war on terrorism is a more contemporary yet equally notorious example. Oh, Republicans, you thought you were going to escape this? Oh, no. You're the beautiful people who gave us the Patriot Act. You're equally guilty. That's what we mean by rule by law. Now, let's look at a few good examples here. This is a story in the Gateway Pundit. This is not in the United States. That's why I chose it. I could find them, but I don't want to do that right now. Germany's war on satire. They fined this guy 11,250 euros for a meme, while the leftist magazine in the same country is celebrated after it depicts Trump giving Hitler a salute. Now, if you can see the screen, on the left, you have a political cartoon showing all of the left-wing leaders and politicians of Germany giving Hitler salutes. And from what I can understand, these are not Photoshopped. These are actually just pictures where they were actually doing it. But then they Photoshopped the picture of Trump wrapped in the American flag giving a Hitler salute and put it on a magazine called Stern, kind of like their example of Time. That is the rule by law, not of law. If Germany were under the rule of law, either both of them get fined or neither of them get fined, because they're both doing the exact same thing. But what Germany is doing is outlawing conservative political opponents. The exact same thing that the American left is trying to do in this country right now. The exact same thing that's been going on all over the world lately. Here's another one. This is Spain. A Spanish priest is facing years in prison for a comment that offended Muslims. And yet those same Muslims in Spain are allowed to say things that are blasphemous and offensive to Christians. That is rule by law, not rule of law. And then in the UK, in the United Kingdom, a Jewish man is arrested for wearing the Star of David in London because it, quote, antagonized pro-Palestinian protesters, unquote. And yet the pro-Palestinian protesters, by their very existence, is an offense and antagonization to a Jew. That's the rule by law, not of law. When you have political correctness, wokeness, where I'm allowed to say something, but you're not allowed to say anything in return, that is the rule by law. Although in this case, it's not enforced by the government, not necessarily. It's enforced by the deep state, the government, within our country, so that the powers that be hand down to the media, these are the things you can and cannot say. So let's just pick the rainbow jihad. If she is a he and he is a she, you must refer to them by their preferred pronouns, or we will fire you and we will kick you out of your job and remove all your benefits and keep you from being able to collect unemployment or whatever else they do, because they're within our government and outside the government. And this is what happens. You hand it down to the talking, the propaganda arm of your organization, of your deep state, the quote unquote mainstream media. That's Operation Mockingbird. They tell you what to think and how to think. So that's MK Ultra. And their drones duly go out and no more kings, no more kings. Well, you're a useful idiot if you're doing that, because your Mockingbird told you to go do this. And your MK Ultra people paid you to go do this. And then a few others show up just because they want to be part of the Me Too crowd. Idiots. From the French word idiot, every one of them, useful idiots, exactly as Marx and Engels would have described them. And Lenin and Stalin, they're doing the bidding of unseen masters who actually are what these people think they're protesting, which is why they're called idiots. So this is how they program us, and this is also a government within a government. So you push this through corporations because the decree was handed down. So everybody who's come through Woodrow freaking Wilson's elite academies, Ivy League schools, and has intermarried and say, well, you're really smart. You can actually do things. So you go to industry and you're really good looking and you're really good at talking. So you get to go to Hollywood and the news media. And you're an idiot who's ugly as snot, can't do anything but follow instructions, but you're part of our team. So you go into politics, Hollywood for ugly people. Where have I heard that before? Oh, yeah, from an ugly fat man that was in media. Joe, you're talking about Rush. He's a hero of the right wing. Yeah, who did left-wing bidding? You don't know that, Joe. Yes, I do. When he was accused of it one time by the senior, the seasoned citizen, he went into a blithering tizzy and called her all sorts of names. Well, he was offended for being called that. Then why does he turn around and tell you that Republicans aren't rhinos? They're just left, they're country club blue blood Republican. What he's saying is they're progressive Republicans and that the party is run by progressive Republicans. He's using a dog whistle. If he meant what he said, he would have pushed for a second party. But he never did that because his job was to keep you and I from doing what we've been doing ever since he died, leaving the Republican Party to become independents. Both parties are hemorrhaging voters right now, and rightly so. Those who understand rule of law, not rule by law, according to my party affiliation, they're leaving those two parties because they're red-pilled and they're waking up and they're like a pox on both your houses. Rush was there to prevent that. I'm convinced of it. Not because of what he said, but because what he did. And what he did conflicted. It was a contradiction to his expressed values. He acted contrary to what he told his audience. That is a sure indication that I'm dealing with somebody who's deceiving me. And the answer was simple. Rush was there for the exact opposite of what he said he was there for. Remember, he once told his audience that when the time came to flee, I'd let you know. And then after that point in time, he said, well, I was looking to move into New Zealand or somewhere else where I can get out of this place. Well, if you were looking to move, why didn't you tell your audience it was time to worry? Anyway, enough of him. What did the founders mean by rule of law? This is from, what is this site? Legal Clarity Team, Administrative and Government Law. It's in your homework. You can go find it. What did the founders mean? Rule of law is a foundational principle of governance in the United States. It means that both the government and the citizens are subject to and obey the law, rather than arbitrary will of individuals. The founders considered this commitment essential for safeguarding liberty and fostering a stable society. It says defining the rule of law. We'll get all to that in a minute. Founders' interpretation, et cetera, et cetera. This is in there for you. I'm going to go over this in just a second for you because I got something else I want to look at in more detail in the second half hour after the bottom of the hour break. But here's the Bill of Rights Institute essay on the rule of law. This is also going to include some of the founding fathers' words, like right here, James Madison in Federalist number 62. It says, a government with unpredictable and arbitrary laws, wrote Madison, quote, poisons the blessings of liberty itself. Well, we're under such a government, have been for a long time. And the courts uphold these unpredictable and arbitrary laws. Down here, where was it? Right there. It will be of little avail to the people, Madison argued, that the laws are made by men of their own choice, if the laws be so voluminous that they cannot be read, or so incoherent that they cannot be understood, or undergo such incessant changes that no man who knows what that law is today can guess what it'll be tomorrow. James Madison, Federalist 62. So what's he talking about? Well, if there's laws being made by regulatory bodies, bureaucracies, and we never see them published, so I don't know what they're doing from day to day, and there are laws being passed in Congress that are 15,000 pages long and nobody has time to read them before they write them, before they vote on them, well, that's not the rule of law. And if when you do read all this stuff, you need Harvard lawyers, well, not Harvard lawyers, you need really good constitutional lawyers from a place that understands, well, I guess you would need Harvard and Yale because they're the lawless individuals writing these things. You have to have specific language speak in there. So you need a decipherer to tell you what the plain English language means there, or what should be plain. Well, that's not the rule of law. This is all turning the law into a weapon, specifically so that I can say, well, sentence ABCDEFG means you go to jail. Well, that person did the exact same thing. Well, sentence ABCDEFG means, if you're a favored party, you don't go to jail. Well, you just read the same law for the exact same crime. Yeah, exactly. That's how it works. Yeah, you see how that works? If I'm a George Soros appointed DA, I'm not going to do anything about stealing an election. But I will prosecute you for questioning the stolen election. See, because the law says, right? That's ruled by law. This is exactly what the prophets in the Bible scream to the rulers of Israel about, is that they've weaponized the law. They've become proverbial murderers and thieves through the legal system. That's where we're at these days. That's what we're under. And I, for one, am more than a little tired of it. Here's another one. And took me a long time to find these for you too. This is constitutionus.com. What is the rule of law? There's a summary here. These that I posted are pretty good. Not perfect. Not all of them, but good. They get the point across. Well, that's your opinion, Joe. No, it's founding fathers' opinion. I'm bowing to the men who put our system in place. I'm not bowing to Joe's opinion. For those of you who can't see me, I just reached over and I grabbed something on my bookshelf. The Debates in the Federal Convention of 1787 by James Madison. He took notes. He told us what they were trying to do. All I have to do is read it. I see the day, I see the people, I see their arguments, their counter arguments. This was something that they had agreed they were not going to do. And then Madison did it anyhow, because he, in his wisdom in this case, knew that we might need this in the future. So I know what they were trying to do because they told us. But if I admit to them, then I have to bend my knee to their will. Or I have to let somebody like Woodrow freaking Wilson come up and say, oh, that's not what they meant. It's a living document. I can reinterpret it today and then again tomorrow. Or better yet, I can reinterpret it in the morning and lunch and in the evening at dinner. And then again for my nightcap. Yes, I know what time it is, brother. I got you. Thank you. Do you have a comment?
Well, yeah, I wanted to say you You don't need to take into account the culture and the history in which it was written. That has no bearing on
Oh, yeah, that
anything.
won't help us. I can read the Constitution today
No.
and know exactly what it was
Yeah.
originally meant to mean. So the pursuit of happiness means eat, drink, be merry, rape, pillage, and plunder. I have the right to steal. All right. Anyway, I've got some decent ones in there for you. I got another one that I'm going to go over when we come back from the break. This one here. I'll drop it down now. We'll come back to that. This is probably one of the better ones that I found for you. This whole subject, I know you can tell, it irritates the snot out of me. Why? Well, for more reasons than you might understand. For one, there is, and this is going to set us up for tomorrow's show. We're still doing the extrapolation of natural law, morality, natural rights, all of that stuff. We'll start with that tomorrow again. But under the rule of law, there are not supposed to be any exemptions. So when the Congress writes a law that applies to you and I but exempts them, that's not constitutional. Say, well, Joe, it's a principle. You have to give some limited immunity to your lawmakers. Otherwise, they have, or to your judges, or they can't be, they can't do their job. Wrong. I can give you limited immunity so long as you're operating under the proper principles of the rule of law. So that when you write a law that exempts you, you are not acting under the proper principles in good faith of the rule of law. You're no longer exempt to the law. That's how this is supposed to work. A police officer is acting within accordance of the law and accidentally violates the law through no purposeful intent. They're still no longer protected by, or shouldn't be protected by the law. So let's say you use deadly force and you shoot somebody who had a water gun. There's a couple of kids outside playing water guns, and you're called and you're looking for a real criminal, and the kid runs around the corner with the water gun, not realizing that he's in the middle of a police engagement. You shoot the kid. You're not exempt from civil suit. And a lot of times in our country, we will exempt the police. Other times we'll prosecute them for murder. Well, now that should be a charge of murder in that case. That might be unintentional manslaughter. Well, why? Well, you have to put the frame of mind of the officer in place here. This is the job of the jury. But you don't give that officer immunity just because. A lawmaker, he writes a law that exempts himself from something. So he can, you know what? You can't have insider trading. And then they go ahead and they allow themselves to have insider trading and say, well, I got caught. I'm going to fine you. You and I go to jail. If they get caught, if they get fined, that's dual system. That's not the way the rule of law is supposed to work, which tells you we're not under the rule of law. We'll go over this in more detail in 3 minutes. Bottom of the hour break. We'll see you when we get back. Real quick, just another example. And this is one I'm pretty sure you've all seen before. If you've got a police officer and they're late to get back to the station for quitting time and they're doing like 20 mile an hour over the speed limit, they're breaking the law, but they're never going to ticket each other. They should be accountable for breaking the law because they're breaking the law. But, well, that's a police officer. He's immune in the execution of his duties. He's not doing his duty at that moment. That's the point. Our society has become so ignorant, so dumbed down to what limited sovereign immunity should mean, as opposed to what it's become. The government has excused itself from anything and everything it does. The only reason that you get prosecuted if you're in the government now is because you ticked off your higher bosses, your mob bosses. That's when you get prosecuted, which case is rule by law. The law is being used as an enforcement tool of the will of the hierarchy, not where the law is the supreme ruler of the land. It's being used arbitrarily. That brings us up to this link that I have. This one's a good one. So the rights recall. It says the rule of law and rule by law, definitions, differences, history, and relevance in modern government. Definitions and meaning. It says rule of law. The rule of law is a principle, an ideal, a target for which you shoot, even if you can't hit it. It's the guideline by which you measure your actions. It's a principle that asserts that law should govern a nation as opposed to arbitrary decisions by individual government officials. It emphasizes that no one, including the government, is above the law. The rule of law is a cornerstone of Republican societies, not democratic, and is often associated with fairness, justice, and accountability. Calling that a cornerstone of democratic societies, that's part of that stupidity I was talking about earlier. That's not what democratic means. Democratic means 51% of us out of 100 vote for a tyranny of us. There you go. Then that's the rule of law, whatever we 51% say. That's why the founding fathers called it the tyranny of the majority, the tyranny of the masses. That is Republican governments. Key characteristics of the rule of law include supremacy of the law. The law is the highest authority, and all individuals and institutions are subject to it. Pay attention to this. You're going to see it again tomorrow. Equality before the law. All of this. You're going to see this again tomorrow. Equality before the law. All citizens are treated equally under the law, regardless of their status, wealth, or power. Legal certainty. Laws are clear, publicized, and stable, ensuring that individuals can understand their rights and obligations. We do not have any of these three yet. Due process. Legal procedures are fair, transparent, and applied consistently. Well, Joe, illegal aliens aren't getting due process. See, you just proved Trump is a tyrant. No, the law says that those illegal aliens do not need to be processed the way you and I would. They can be arrested and exported forthwith. That's the law. That's the process that was put in place for an illegal alien. They're being treated by due process exactly like Obama did it, and Biden, with the few they deported. So when you hold Trump, the judges hold Trump to a different, higher standard than they did Obama, you do not have the rule of law. So if you're a leftist that's thinking Trump is a king because of all of this stuff, sit down and shut up. I don't want to hear it. You're a hypocrite, and I don't want to hear it out of you. Grow up. 5, protection of fundamental rights. The law safeguards individual rights and freedoms, not by color or social class or politically accepted status. Not because you're part of the rainbow jihad do you get more rights than another. Well, I just want equal rights. You have as much right to marry a member of the opposite sex as anybody else. That's equal. It's on the definition of what marriage is. Marriage is supported by society because it's supporting families and procreation of children, which is necessary to sustain the society. So that's a commonwealth thing. But the demand that, you should be able to marry your cow or your horse because you're in love with them, or marry yourself, all three real examples that have happened in this country, that is not equal protection, because that doesn't fit the definition of marriage. such as freedom of speech, assembly, religion. We'll cover all of these tomorrow as well. The rule of law is often seen as a safeguard against tyranny and arbitrary governance, and ensures that power is exercised within legal constraints and that citizens have recourse to justice when their rights are violated. Rule by law, on the other hand, refers to a system where the law is used as a tool of government to control society and maintain order. Well, not order, in this case, tyranny. In this system, the government may enact laws, but these laws are not necessarily applied equally or fairly. Ding, 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 we win that one. Instead, they serve the interest of those in power, often at the expense of individual rights and freedoms. That's where we are. Key characteristics. Instrumental use of law. Laws are used as instruments to achieve political or social objectives, often without a regard to justice or fairness. We did this to prosecute Trump in New York, his 34 convictions, and then they never even finished the process. Trump has still not gotten due process. They need to sentence him. They won't sentence him because the minute they do, he appeals, he wins his appeal, and he's no longer a convicted felon. Well, he's not a convicted felon until you sentence him. If you're on the left, sit down, shut up. God, I'm so sick and tired of people. Selective enforcement. Laws are applied selectively to favor certain groups or individuals while suppressing dissent or opposition. Well, that's affirmative action right there. That's drawing congressional districts so you can guarantee black representatives. That's the definition of racism. Apartheid. That is not the rule of law. That's the rule by law. Hello, leftists. Lack of accountability. Those in power may operate above the law or manipulate legal systems to avoid accountability. Hello, both parties. Limited protection of rights. Individual rights may be disregarded or overridden in the name of maintaining order or achieving government goals. Hello, reparations. Rule by law is often associated with authoritarian regimes where the legal system is subordinated to the interests of the ruling elite. While laws may exist, they are not applied impartially, and the legal system may be used to legitimize oppression or injustice, which is exactly what we have now. This gives you the evolution of it. Here are some examples. Purpose of a law. Rule of law versus rule by law. The law serves as a framework for justice, equality, and protection of rights. But by law, the law is used as a tool to maintain control and achieve political objectives. That's what's happening right now. Either they write the law that way or they interpret it that way through their judges. Application of the law. Rule of law. Laws are applied impartially and consistently with no one above the law. Rule by law. Laws are applied selectively, like you're a different race or you're a different socioeconomic income. You're rich or you're a conservative or you're a Christian. Often to benefit those in power or suppress dissent. Oh, January 6th. Accountability. Rule of law. Government officials and institutions are held accountable under the law. That never happens anymore. Rule by law. Those in power may operate above the law or manipulate legal systems to avoid accountability, which is exactly what's happening with Bolton and all those other leftists that are being arrested right now. That's what they're doing. They're manipulating the system. Protection of rights. Rule of law. Individual rights and freedoms are safeguarded by the legal system. Rule by law. Individual rights may be disregarded or overridden in the name of maintaining order or achieving government goals, in which case, social justice. Legal certainty. Rule of law. Laws are clear, publicized, and stable, ensuring predictability and fairness. Rule by law. The laws may be vague, arbitrary, or subject to change, creating uncertainty or instability. This is a good article. I highly recommend you go over that one at some point in time. Now I'm going to get into something else. This is from the Encyclopedia Britannica, the rule of law. Well, we've already gone over this, but it's going to say something in here that I want you to understand. It talks about liberals. It is talking about classic liberals, but the reason Britannica doesn't say that is because they don't have to in their country. This is an English site. In England, they still understand a liberal means the founding fathers' idea of limited government protecting individual rights and liberties. In this country, liberal means bat crap crazy totalitarian. Thank you, Woodrow freaking Wilson. But there's something else in this article I want to show you. Challenges to the rule of law. Anyone who holds that what matters most in politics is having the right people in power and not how power should be constrained will be unconvinced of the value of the rule of law. In other words, I need the nice people, the sweet people, the people who want justice, social justice. I need the intellectually self-appointed elite. I need the Woodrow Wilsons of the world. Remember, Woodrow Wilson said this. You need the smartest, the most qualified. They're not going to believe in the rule of law. Why? Because the rule of law constrains their godliness. Remember, if you have the right people in power, well, they'll never do anything wrong because they're, gods. It's what I've been telling you this whole time. It's right here. They're just not using that language. In which case, a certain person I know would dismiss this, saying, that's not what it means. Yes, it is, if you understand concept. Which brings us to another individual that I love to hate, Thomas Hobbes, and the rule by law tradition. Yes, this is why I reject Hobbes. He's all for rule by law. This site is the Cambridge University Press, part of the Ivy League school system, part of Wilson's school system. They love Hobbes. Summary: Thomas Hobbes is the founder of the rule by law tradition in modern Western thought. It argues that there is no more to law than what the holder of supreme legislative power chooses to enact, whatever is content. In other words, it's elected dictatorship. Hobbes found it in opposition to the concept of the rule of law exemplified in the writings of Sir Edward Coke and later John Locke, according to which the common law, as interpreted by judges, contains fundamental legal and moral principles, ideals, targets to shoot for, which condition the consent of enacted or statute law. Coke and others in this rule of by law tradition thus consider the rule of law to be a moral good. Hobbes thinks it's a moral bad. It constrains the sovereign, the executive. I hate Hobbes because he justifies tyranny under the rule of law, which is rule by law. He sounds good when you read him. He sounds good until you understand him. It's kind of like who's a socialist? Somebody who read Marx. Who's a free marketer? Somebody who understood Marx. So much for all these self-appointed elite that think they understand Marx, because they're all still socialists. Brings me to another article. I don't think I put this one in your homework. This is from the Blaze, Daniel Horowitz. Who checks the judges? No one. And that's the problem. So long as courts get the last word on everything, the Constitution becomes whatever they say it is. The time has come to say no. Amen, amen, and amen. As long as the judges are the final arbiter on what the Constitution does and doesn't say and what a law does and doesn't mean, they are the dictators. And that's the problem with our society, is we have allowed the judiciary to seize hold of an authority it was never intended to have. So this brings me to something else. What you have, and I'm going to cover this tomorrow, but if the rule of law, and I'm going to stay secular today, so the rule of law becomes your highest authority. Now, it's still man-made, so it's subject to interpretation and twisting and distortion. But let's say I establish rule of law, where the law is the dictator, according to natural rights and natural law by the political philosophy of John Locke and Mr. Coke. Well, John Locke wrote it straight out of the book of Romans. So it will be subject to universal morality as derived by natural law, something we're working on Tuesday, tomorrow. So if I put that natural law in place, then I'm constrained by what the founding fathers would have said the government has to do. But if I put Hobbes's idea of natural law in place, then I'm unconstrained. I can do whatever the heck I want. I'm a god. As long as I'm the one in power, I'm God. I can do whatever I want to do with the law. So I don't understand why you have a rule of by law under Hobbes. That's just the rule of decree. They use the language because they want to sell it to the people, but they don't mean what they're saying. It's doublespeak. That's what I started the show out with. It's the perversion of the rule of the language. It's a perversion of rule of law. So now here's the problem. So long as either one is created by and subject to the whims of being changed by man, well, then they're technically both still ruled by law. One just might have a more objective origin or objective goal. But so long as it's a rule by man, well, to put it in other terms, y'all know this is a biblical theology, a biblical worldview show. The rule by law is the son of the bond servant. Hagar, Ishmael, does whatever they want to do. By law, because they're in power. And what is the prophetic nature of Ishmael? A wild ass of a man with his hand raised against everybody. He's at war with everybody. He's trying to exert himself over everybody. That's the modern day liberal, the progressive. That's the totalitarian in any shape, form, or any time, any era, any nation. That's the prophetic nature. Whereas the son of promise, Isaac, that's the supernatural, the spiritual man. That's the man born from above. So Ishmael's going to be rule of law according to man, which is rule by law, no matter which way you go, even the founding fathers. Unless, of course, you recognize that the founding fathers did not draw their authority from man. Get to that tomorrow. And they didn't. They said so. That's why the people who wanted to be rule of man, the progressives, that's why they divorced the Constitution from the Declaration of Independence. If you remarry those two documents, as they were always intended to be, then you will see that the founding fathers avoid the problem I'm explaining right now. The founding fathers appealed to the son of promise. They looked to a higher source of their law than just reason in natural law. And they wrote it into the Constitution. It's there. But that's the son of promise, Isaac, because you were going after God's promises, which means you're born from above, which means you're not an animal. Ishmael's an animal, like a wild ass of a man. Which brings us to Torah and sin. Torah is the target. It's teaching. It's the principles, the concepts, the ideals. That's the target for which we shoot. Joe, you're an idealist. Yes, you dang straight I am. I'm shooting for the V ring. If Wade is listening, he'll appreciate that. I think Aaron Spikes will too. It's not enough to hit the bullseye. I want to hit the V ring. If I can, I want to be dead center on the V. But when you go outside of, or you inappropriately or improperly apply the teachings, Torah means teaching. You improperly apply them, you miss it, or you break the teachings. That's sin. It's an archery term, miss the mark. Torah is also derived from an archery term. It means to draw, or to draw a straight line, to draw out, to point. This is the straight way with the hand. Remember, the Hebrews, it's a pictorial type of thinking in a lot of cases. So I show you the straight path. Shoot the arrow that way. Well, that'll help you hit the target if you do what you're told. When you don't do what you're told, you sin. You missed the mark. You missed the target. But Torah gives us a target by which we can correct ourselves. This is what Jefferson meant when he said, raise a banner by which they may repair. That's what this was. A banner. Raise a flag telling us what you're trying to do and why, so that when things go sideways, progeny, later descendants of the founding fathers, can look back, see what you were trying to do, why you were trying to do it, and we can fix it. We'll have the benefit of hindsight, and we can correct what you got wrong. Just like the Constitution was a repair of the Articles of Confederation. We're at that point now where if we do not repair what we currently have, we will be lost. But the reason I tell you it's not going to happen is because so many people are in love with normalcy bias. They're scared of what trying to repair this is going to look like. And rightly so. Because how are you going to do it without using the two parties that pretend to, well, the one party pretending to be two? You're not going to. The Democrats and Republicans are never going to allow themselves to be shut out of this repair. So here's the thing. If you think that your party, your Democrat or your Republican Party, is going to help anybody do anything other than perpetuate the status quo, no matter where the destination is going to end up being, you're wrong. Because you have to remember, neither party is fighting for you or I, or for the nation, or for the rule of law. Both parties are fighting for their espoused side of their team, fighting for offense or defense. The Democrats are offense. They advance the ball to the left. The Republicans play defense. They keep anybody from going backwards and taking any lost ground back. They prevent us from advancing the ball back toward the original founding. So they're both going to hold on to their power structure. They're both corporations. Nobody that is not independently wealthy runs in either party without their permission. Which is why Ross Perot had to run as an independent. Which is why Trump was allowed to run as a Republican. He had the money to do it whether they liked it or not. It's also why, if you'll look, you'll see that the parties from time to time kick people out of their own party. That's why they're looking to primary people in this country, both on both parties. The party wants to remove them. I guarantee you they'll succeed if they want to primary you. Or, the good, lawful, always obeying the law, never breaking the law, never doing anything wrong party will just appoint a candidate without ever having a vote for her. And she will be the most qualified presidential candidate the United States has ever seen. Kamala, I'm not a white woman. I put my feet in the air to get here, Harris. And if that offends you, I'm sorry, but that is exactly how she got where she's at. She slipped her way to the top. Exactly what feminists are supposed to oppose. So she's everything she claims to be against. And by the way, she intentionally kept a black man on death row to further her political career, and she knew he was innocent. Fought to keep him there, fought to have him executed for her political advantage. And you keep defending her there, Democrats. But Republicans, you're no better. Probably worse. At least we know the Democrats are vile. You guys pretend to wear halos and wings. And when I look at what you do as opposed to what you say, well, at the very least, you're cannibals. You eat each other. I'd rather vote for the open evil before I voted for the one that comes in the wolf in sheep's clothing. End of rant, Charlie. Anything to add?
No, that was good, I guess. Better than most Monday shows. I'll have to give you that.
Yeah, nothing scary about the end of the world, right?
Yeah.
Under the rule of law, our elected officials have a fiduciary responsibility to us. Fiduciary means they handle our money for us.
Yeah.
You know that anywhere else, if you're under a fiduciary responsibility, you're held doubly accountable to the law. It's a higher standard for you. But that doesn't apply to our elected officials. They just say, well, you can vote them out. And then you got Trump, the head executive, the DA, yelling at his assistant district attorney, arrest some of these people, do something. Hey, DA, why don't you charge them? Trump, you do realize you have the authority to do that, right? You don't have to go through Pam Bondi. You can charge people and have them arrested. You can pick up the phone to the DOJ and say, go arrest these people. Here are the charges. I want it done today. And guess what? If they don't obey you, fire them. And when the judge says, you can't fire them, you tell the judge, they're under the executive. I can do whatever the heck I want. Go read the Constitution. If you've got a problem with that, I'm going to charge you with sedition and subversion both, and you won't be on the bench this time tonight. See you later, judge. The judge will say, well, that's lawlessness. That's you pretending to be a king. No, that's him actually applying the law the way it's written. And we're so far gone, we think that's dictatorship.
Yeah.
Charlie, before we sign out of here, did you see Mary Ann's comment?
Yeah, I saw that.
She says, no, nothing's scary in this Today Show. All right, folks, we're going to get out of here. We love you. We thank you for joining us. And we do love you. If you think I enjoy these shows, no, man, no. This is heartbreaking. People died to give us a country that we didn't have to put up with this crap. And what have we done with it? We've done what all rich, spoiled, and entitled children do. We've squandered it. We've dumped all over it. We've defecated and urinated on it. We've drug it through the ground, through the mud. And then we complain the whole time that it's not right. You didn't give me, I won the lottery and you didn't give it to me on a silver platter in 10s and 20s. You gave it to me in a suitcase full of hundreds. Oh my God. It's such the horrible humanity, all the humanity type of thing. That's what we're doing. I don't like this, but you got to face the monster. You got to look him right in the eye. And the reason I did this is I want you to ask yourself, when's the last time you even told yourself, hey, this isn't the rule of law, this is the rule by law? And did you even know the difference? Do you still? Do you care? Are you okay as long as your team's doing it to somebody else? If so, congratulations, you're a good progressive. You have to look at the morality mirror and deal with the person in your own mirror, the reflection in the mirror first before you deal with anybody else or anything else. Make sure you understand your targets and what you're shooting for. Pick them and choose them deliberately. That's what we're trying to help you do to the best of our ability. Tomorrow, we continue on our extrapolation of morality from the one thought, I think, therefore I am. From that statement, I'm going to get you to universal morality under a creator. We're going to go a lot farther tomorrow. We'll see you then.